The next entry is by David. So this is Komi Can't Communicate, episode 8. And in this one, we see, now I can't remember the exact details of what's going on here, but I believe that Komi-san is visiting a relative, and I believe she's seeing her cousin or something like that after a long time of not seeing her. Something along those lines. In any case, let's find out what this says. 驚かすつもりはなかったし、自分の方がより驚くコミさん. Meaning what? Alright, so again, kind of as before, we're reading this traditionally. Right to left, and top to bottom. A lot of these sort of intentional texts, I don't know what else to call them, where we're kind of getting a view into somebody's head or getting some sort of commentary or from the narrator or something. These are all typically written in this direction, kind of in the same manner you might read like a novel or something in Japanese. So let's start with as usual, we want to read backwards if possible, or at least translate backwards. We don't want to read backwards. We want to read forwards and get used to thinking in a Japanese way. But when we translate, it helps to go backwards to forwards. So we have Komi-san. All right, we know who that is. There she is. This is about Komi-san. Kind of as before, this is going to be one where this would be an incomplete sentence. We'll see why in a second. What Komi-san is this? What manner of Komi-san is this? This is Odoroku Komi-san. Odoroku means to be surprised. To be surprised. So, 自分の方がより驚く. So, より驚く, let's start there. より驚く, we could say this means more surprised. Many of you who've studied Japanese before are going to think that we say もっと驚く. And it's not that that's so much wrong, it's just a little less usual. Even more than someone or something else might be another way of thinking of this yori. So she's more surprised than someone or something else. Maybe in the context this will make sense. Perhaps the cousin was surprised by something. I believe that's what happened. The cousin was surprised. And Komi-san, this is basically a way of saying she was even more surprised. So we might even translate that to even more, at least literally, if we're going for a literal translation. We're not going for literal translations usually, but we want to understand what's happening. So we'll be literal about this right now. 自分の方が, 自分の方が, 自分 is oneself. In this case, it's Komi, so it's herself. So her, what in the way, ho, or kata, in the way of herself. In the way of herself. 自分の方が. So we could say, this is a really common construction. Blah, 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 方が. Blah, 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 より. And so forth. So this would be more so this than that, we might say. So especially with this construction, blah, 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 or なんとかなんとかの方が, なんとかなんとかより. Very common construction to use to say more this than that. In this case, more herself, jibun, than you might, and the then being more like yori here. So on its own, yori odoroku would be even more surprised, but when we do it in this construction, jibun no hou ga yori odoroku, even more herself than someone or something else surprised. She's more surprised than someone or something else. In this case, her cousin. Komma. Got a comma there. We're going to read this whole part together because it's really one idea, essentially. So, there was not something though, nakata. And then we'll just come back to she in a moment. Nakata, there was not something, or something did not happen. So in this case, odorokasu. Tsumori wa nakatta. What is odorokasu? Well, odoroku is to oneself be surprised. And often, if you see this, if you see kanji that are used for a reading like odoro, that are used for two different words, and yet they use the same kanji, they have the same reading involved, but just the latter, what we call okurigana, is different, then there's a really good chance that one is what we call the transitive and the other is the intransitive. What does that mean? So, odoroku would be intransitive. Intransitive. That means that oneself is surprised. Odorokasu would be transitive. This means surprising somebody or something else. Odorokasu. So, odorokasu, she is doing the surprising thing to somebody. We just say in English to be surprised, or to surprise someone maybe is a better, there we go. To surprise someone, that's what we would say. Surprise as in to do to someone, not to be surprised, which we also say. We say that when we're ourselves surprised. Perhaps we say, I am surprised, or I have been surprised. We have a different construction for it. Japanese just has a whole other word for it, odoroku. So odorokasu is the word to surprise somebody. All right, so there's that. Now what is this odorokasu? There's probably a faster way to get all this off, but whatever. Odorokasu tsumori. Tsumori means to have an intention to do something. Odorokasu tsumori, to intend to surprise. To intend to surprise. Odorokasu tsumori. If I wanted to say, I intend to go. Iku tsumori desu. Iku tsumori desu. I intend to eat something. Nanika o taberu tsumori. Nanika o taberu tsumori. Alright, so those are ways we use tsumori. And Wa just says, this is what we're talking about. Although what it's really doing here is it's kind of joining forces with the nakata to say, of the things that were the case, it is most certainly not the case that she intended to surprise her cousin, right? To surprise somebody, in this case, surprise her cousin. So, this she is kind of acting as a because. Maybe many of you are used to kara. She kind of is like an inexhaustive list of reasons for something. So, because she was not intending to surprise her cousin, she herself is more surprised than her cousin. That is the kind of komi-san that we see here. So we might do this all together as something like, again, literally, not the way we'd want to do it as an actual translation for a manga, but in order to know that we understand what this is so we can then find proper natural English for it, we would translate this as something like komi-san, who is more surprised herself than her cousin or than someone else because she did not intend to surprise someone else, her cousin. All right? Hopefully that works for you.